I remember that night like it was etched into my memory with permanent ink, the soft clatter of silverware, the faint scent of roasted turkey, and the low hum of conversation that always felt just a little too loud. It was our weekly family dinner, a tradition I had once loved, full of laughter and stories. But tonight felt different. Tension lingered in the air, almost tangible, like a thread waiting to snap. I walked into the dining room carrying my modest contribution, a homemade salad, and tried to wear the easy smile that had always been my shield. My parents were already seated, exchanging small talk with my older brother, Daniel. He had this way of speaking that made everyone else feel small, like he measured their worth in jokes and smirks. I had loved him once, trusted him once. Tonight, I could see, he was ready to pick at me, to carve out his entertainment at my expense. "Still in that same job?" Daniel asked casually, the corner of his mouth twitching with that smirk that always made my chest tighten. "I mean, don't get me wrong, it's cute." I forced a polite laugh, feeling the familiar ache in my chest. I had worked so hard to get where I was, spent years quietly proving myself, and here he was, reducing it to a punchline. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for my reaction, for the awkward stumble that always made me doubt myself. I took a deep breath and smiled, the kind of smile that hid a storm inside. "Actually, things have been going really well," I said softly, placing my salad on the table. "I got promoted recently." A small pause. My father nodded absently, my mother glanced at me, but Daniel laughed. A short, sharp laugh, dismissive and cruel. "Promoted," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You? That's cute. Must be one of those tiny promotions." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, the familiar sting of humiliation. For a moment, the old me, the girl who had once tried desperately to earn his approval, wanted to shrink, to fold into herself, to let the words sting in silence. But something inside me had changed. Over the years, I had learned that my worth wasn't measured by his laughter or my family's fleeting approval. I took another deep breath and let a calmness wash over me. "I'm glad you find it funny," I said quietly, letting the words settle. "I also bought a new office space downtown." "It's nice." Daniel's smirk faltered slightly. "Office space? You mean like, a real office?" "For what?" I didn't answer right away. I simply smiled, the kind of smile that carries the weight of years of hard work and quiet determination. And in that pause, in that silence, I felt a strange sense of power, not the loud, vengeful kind, but the quiet, unwavering kind. I caught my parents' eyes briefly. I could see the flicker of surprise, maybe even doubt, in their expressions. But I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need anyone's applause. I just needed to keep walking my own path, to let my life be proof of what I was capable of. Dinner continued, but I could feel the shift in the room. Daniel's jokes became slightly less sharp, slightly less confident. I didn't speak much after that, content to observe, to let my calm presence speak louder than any words could. That night, as I washed the dishes alone later, I allowed myself a small, private smile. For the first time in a long time, I realized that approval wasn't a gift anyone could give me, it was something I earned for myself, quietly, steadily, without fanfare. And the moment I fully accepted that, something shifted inside me. I didn't know it yet, but this dinner, this single moment, was the beginning of a quiet journey, one where I would learn to protect my heart, to set boundaries, and to grow into a woman who no longer needed anyone's laughter to define her worth. And somewhere deep down, I knew that one day, Daniel would see the results of my quiet strength, and I would be ready. The days after that dinner were strange. It wasn't that my family suddenly changed, but the air around me felt heavier, thicker, somehow. Daniel's laughter still echoed in my mind, sharper now that I had time to replay it, turning it over like a bitter stone. I wanted to confront him, to demand respect, to make him see that I wasn't a child to tease. But every time I imagined the confrontation, I realized I didn't need to fight. Not yet. I began to notice the little things, small dismissals from my parents, the subtle way Daniel would mention my tiny office to friends when he thought I wasn't listening, the way my achievements were almost always overlooked at family gatherings. At first, I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was imagining it. But then came the invitations I didn't receive, the casual forgetting of my accomplishments, the way my brother would casually belittle me when I spoke about work. It hurt. God, it hurt. Not just because I loved them and wanted their pride, but because the trust one had built over the years seemed hollow. I had always been the gentle one, the peacemaker, the girl who tried to see the good in everyone. I wanted to believe my family loved me unconditionally. But now, I was beginning to understand that love without respect is fragile, almost invisible. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at a cafe, nursing a cup of coffee I hadn't even wanted, thinking about all the times I had smiled through jokes that cut too deep. I remembered how I had shared my dreams with Daniel when we were kids, how he had laughed at my ambitions with a casual cruelty I hadn't recognized until now. And I realized something that made my chest tighten. I had been trusting too much, giving pieces of myself to people who weren't ready, or willing, to value them. That realization stung, but it also lit a quiet fire inside me. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to shout or humiliate anyone. I wanted something far simpler and stronger: dignity, independence, and the kind of respect that can't be borrowed or borrowed from others. I started to change, subtly at first. I stopped explaining myself when Daniel made his jabs. I began focusing on my work, pouring energy into projects that mattered, and building networks outside the family circle. It was a slow process, and some days the loneliness of my path weighed heavily on me. But with each quiet success, each small step forward, I felt a sense of self-worth growing inside me, like roots taking hold beneath the soil. I also learned the power of observation. Family gatherings became my silent study sessions, watching their expressions, their slips, the way Daniel's confidence seemed inflated but fragile. I noticed my parents' hesitation when I spoke about opportunities, the way their eyes darted when I mentioned promotions or new responsibilities. Every smirk, every careless word, told me more about who they were, and who I needed to be. And so I began to move quietly, deliberately. I cultivated patience, nurturing my goals while holding my emotions in check. I no longer needed validation at the table or applause for my efforts. I let my life unfold naturally, confident that respect earned quietly is worth infinitely more than laughter bought at someone else's expense. I still carried pain, of course, the sting of being underestimated, of being laughed at, of being invisible in the very family I loved most. But that pain became my compass rather than my anchor. It reminded me why boundaries mattered, why self-respect wasn't negotiable, and why my future was mine alone to shape. And in the quiet corners of my mind, I made a promise: one day, the truth of my efforts, my growth, and my success would speak louder than any joke, any smirk, any casual dismissal ever could. And when that day came, I would stand calmly, proud, and unshaken, letting life, rather than anger, do the talking. The following months were a quiet battle, a slow, almost invisible transformation that I could feel but no one else could yet see. I poured myself into my work, waking early, staying late, learning, connecting, and building. Every project I touched, every idea I nurtured, became a brick in the foundation of something I couldn't yet fully show the world. And slowly, brick by brick, I realized I was building more than just a career, I was building myself. At home, family gatherings became exercises in patience. Daniel still tried to provoke, still tossed off little comments designed to sting, but I no longer reacted. I had discovered a strange and powerful truth: when you stop giving people the reaction they crave, their words lose their weight. I sat at the table, smiled quietly, and let the conversations wash over me. I observed their habits, their pride, their insecurities. Every smirk, every casual dismissal, only reminded me why I had chosen this path of silent strength. I also began setting boundaries. Invitations I once accepted without question were now carefully considered. Conversations I once over-explained myself in, I now approached with calm, deliberate brevity. I learned to say no softly but firmly, and for the first time I felt no guilt in doing so. Protecting my energy wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Even outside the family, I discovered resilience I hadn't known I possessed. Colleagues trusted me more, clients respected my focus, and mentors began to notice my diligence. I didn't brag or announce my progress, I simply let results accumulate like quiet victories. And with each small achievement, I felt the old pain of being underestimated begin to fade. My confidence no longer depended on applause or acknowledgement, it came from the quiet knowledge that I was doing exactly what I was meant to do. There were still moments of doubt. Some nights, lying in bed, I would replay Daniel's laugh, my parents' dismissals, the way I had been treated like an afterthought. Sometimes it stung sharply, a sudden ache I couldn't ignore. But I had learned to sit with that pain, to recognize it, and to channel it into determination rather than despair. Each pang of hurt became fuel for focus, each memory of dismissal a reminder to remain patient, deliberate, and unwavering. I began keeping a journal, not to vent or complain, but to document progress. I wrote down my goals, small victories, ideas, and reflections. Looking back over the months, I could see the transformation clearly, the girl who had once sought approval in every smile, who had carried the weight of others' laughter, had grown into a woman who walked calmly, confidently, and intentionally. And quietly, in this silence, I started to notice changes in my family's behavior. Daniel's remarks seemed slightly less biting. My parents no longer asked subtle questions about my career, as if they sensed the distance I had created, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. I realized that my calm strength had begun to shift the dynamic, that my dignity was more powerful than any argument, more persuasive than any explanation. One evening, sitting alone in my tiny but growing office, I allowed myself a rare smile. I had built something remarkable here, not just the career or the office space, but a version of myself that could not be shaken by laughter or dismissal. I understood, finally, that life's quiet victories, those earned with patience, wisdom, and integrity, carry more weight than any shouted triumph. And deep inside, I felt the seed of anticipation. One day, Daniel would see the results. One day, my work, my focus, and my calm strength would speak for me. And when that moment came, I would be ready, not with anger, not with spectacle, but with quiet, undeniable dignity. For the first time, I felt entirely free. Not free from my family, but free from the need for their approval. And in that freedom, I discovered something far more valuable: peace, self-respect, and the unwavering strength to stand tall, no matter what anyone else thought. The day finally arrived, though I didn't announce it or plan it as a dramatic confrontation. Life had taught me that the most powerful statements are often made quietly, with no audience except the truth itself. My office, the one I had built quietly, patiently, over months of late nights, careful planning, and unwavering dedication, was ready to welcome clients and partners. And coincidentally, Daniel had agreed to join me for lunch that afternoon, unaware that this simple meeting would be enlightening. I greeted him with the same calm smile I had perfected over the past months. His usual smirk was there, faint but noticeable, as he looked around the reception area. I could see his curiosity fighting with disbelief. "So, this is your office?" he asked, a hint of incredulity in his voice. "Yes," I said, gesturing around. "It's been a lot of work, but it's mine." His eyes flickered, scanning the sleek space, the polished floors, the neatly arranged desks, and the subtle touches of professionalism I had insisted on. He didn't say anything, but I could see the shift, the brief, undeniable realization that I had created something substantial, something he hadn't anticipated. We walked through the office, and I introduced him to my team. They were polite, professional, and enthusiastic, and I noticed Daniel's silence grow heavier with each handshake and nod. He glanced at me now and then, as if seeking some flaw, some imperfection that could justify the smug superiority he had always assumed. But there was nothing. Just results. Quiet, undeniable, well-earned results. I could see the tension in him, the faint discomfort that comes when someone realizes they have underestimated another person for far too long. And I smiled inwardly, not with triumph or gloating, but with the serene satisfaction of someone who knows their own worth. Over lunch, Daniel tried to make small talk, teasing lightly at first, testing the waters. But I simply responded with calm confidence, answering questions honestly, never over-explaining, never seeking approval. Every word, every gesture, radiated composure. He began to realize that the old patterns, mockery, sarcasm, superiority, no longer applied here. The girl he had laughed at, the sister he had dismissed, had grown into a woman whose quiet strength could not be shaken. By the end of the meal, Daniel was uncharacteristically quiet. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice or point out his past dismissals. I simply smiled and thanked him for coming. There was no need for humiliation, no need to prove anything in anger. Life had already done it for me, with subtle, undeniable consequences. Walking home afterward, I felt a deep sense of peace. The tension that had long shadowed family gatherings felt distant, almost irrelevant. I had learned that boundaries, self-respect, and patience are stronger than any sarcastic remark, any casual dismissal, any fleeting superiority. My success wasn't a weapon, it was a reflection of the quiet dignity I had cultivated, a reminder that life rewards those who focus on building themselves rather than tearing others down. That evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, reflecting on the journey. The hurt, the betrayal, the quiet doubts, they had all shaped me, yes, but they had not defeated me. And Daniel's stunned silence? That was not revenge, it was life's gentle acknowledgement that underestimating someone comes with natural consequences. I smiled to myself, feeling the warmth of self-respect fill every corner of my being. The lesson was clear: strength is quiet, dignity is patient, and boundaries are essential. By nurturing my own worth, I had found something far more valuable than approval or recognition. I had found peace, and with it, a quiet joy that no laughter or smirk could ever diminish. And in that moment, I realized the ultimate truth: I didn't need anyone to validate me. I had already proven, to myself and to life, that my value was undeniable. And that was enough.